Okay, well, welcome back, everybody. I hope the time in the breakout rooms was thought-provoking and insightful. I'm going to ask all of our breakout room moderators to turn on their cameras, as we had each room moderator report out on some of the main themes, questions, or areas of discussion that stand out from the conversations that you've had in these breakout sessions. If you would like to ask a question about something a moderator has shared, please feel free to enter it into the Q&A window. And I think we will start. I've had a couple folks let me know that they were ready. So maybe we'll start with room 2, which was moderated by Josh Shapiro. If you'd like to just quickly give us a 2-minute summary of your discussion and any thoughts that came up that you'd like to share with the group.
Yeah, thanks. So we had a small but mighty team. And the goal of our breakout session was to really think about how to operationalize collective impact. I think at a 30,000 foot level, everyone can agree that, this is a great tool, and everyone kind of agrees around closing opportunity gaps. What we tried to focus on is to take that down a couple levels in terms of how are the working groups going to be formed? Who's going to collect the data? How is the data going to be rolled up? What are we going to do with that? What levels of support and resources do we have? And so we had a really good discussion, as well as a number of questions in terms of, as the session was titled, how is this actually going to be operationalized? And so I think that's an important component for the over 100 activities and initiatives that are happening on this campus that are going to be pulled in some facet into this larger collective impact initiative to ensure that everyone kind of understands their role, how they're going to be supported within the broader context and framework.
Wonderful. Thank you, Josh. So let's move on to room 3, which was moderated by Eben A. Williams.
Thank you, ABC Sanders. I'd like to start off by thanking the panel. Eric, Danny, and Lavella were great partners, and thanking the people who attended. We were one of the undergraduate experience rooms, and so we were focused on the mentoring for all and affordable course materials. And I appreciate that we started the conversation up with the context of what the impact could mean to students, success in either of these areas, and what that could look like. We followed on, and that was really dictated by UQs, the sense of belonging, basic needs being met. Some people forego their basic needs to afford their course materials, really meeting students where they are to get them the resources they need and understanding that. And that was true for mentoring as well as affordable course materials. One of our attendees or participants said that, what about the students who need mentoring but don't know they need it, right? And I said, yes, that is a huge question, right? We went into how to engage with staff and faculty, asking about where you have excellence, what type of excellence you have, and coming to the table to play with us, saying what we could do as faculty to negotiate prices. And then there was a clear piece that I think everyone might be interested in understand or hearing about around the fact that there's a disconnect between staff understanding what is happening in the classroom for students. We talked about the fact that we've all had to buy course materials. If you went to school, you had to buy something at some point in time separate from your tuition. But this new piece of paying for the question set or the workbook is something that is new. And so really looking at how to contain that cost and using collective impact to use different resources, technology, and the beautiful brain and talent of our campus to think about our own materials. How could we source it ourselves? What could we do to reduce that cost? And would we be interested in doing that together? So it was a really, really fun in that space. I was trying to see if there was anything else that I wanted to highlight. And I think the last thing I'll end with is the fact that you may have a good idea, but one of the quotes that I received when I was in undergrad by one of my favorite professors is, all great ideas have also been thought of by others. So really taking the time to educate yourself on what else is going on campus around what great idea you may have, so that you can truly be in collective impact and moving in the same direction.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ebony. I think it would make sense to move to the next breakout room that focused on the undergraduate experience, which was moderated by David Ryder.
So thanks, Alison. We had a lively bunch in our room. We were active and busy and ran out of time and all those things. But I also wanted to thank the panelists, Maruth Figueroa and David Artis. Maruth really helped us focus on one piece of collective impact, which is that it's an asset-based approach and it's reliant on stakeholding. And so we worked on that. We thought about stakeholding within the Summer Bridge context. We thought about the many assets across this campus being brought together to make that experience real and special for our entering students. We had some really nice feedback on Summer Bridge for transfer students, which we're piloting in 2022. So that's exciting as well. We found some new partners even in the room with us. So that was great. And David then emphasized another piece of collective impact, which is interdependence. And that was very, very helpful. There were a lot of people in the room who had research experiences going on and were looking for a way to build off of partnerships that might still exist on campus. And importantly, and I want to emphasize this piece really and underline it, because I think this is sometimes a piece of collective impact that we forget. We were discovering ways to reduce work for people by sharing best practices that were already in place. And so by getting some of that shared best practice across, by realizing who our partners are, we might be able to actually see a reduction in effort and allow us to free up some time to do all those things that are hard to get to. And then lastly, I just want to say it was really nice. We had a lot of people in the room thinking in terms of how they could support each other. And it's one of the great pieces of the UC San Diego culture that we think in these terms, and it was evident again today.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, David. I'd like to take a brief turn to go back to our Collective Impact 101 Covering the Basics breakout room. And I'm wondering if Georgia Kovacs and Kim Calderon could provide a quick summary.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. In our session, we talked again about the foundational pieces of collective impact, what opportunity gaps look like at our university, and how the method can work to close those gaps. I think a key takeaway of our session was around data access and wrangling. So we talked about, the need to be able to streamline the different types of data that people have into common reporting systems, and also just getting access to the wealth of institutional data that we have, and how the backbone organization can really support those efforts, and being able to link people up that lead different activities and initiatives to that institutional data so they can track some of their progress using that information.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Georgia. So I will turn to Jim Anthony, who was moderating the Graduate Experience and Inclusive Pedagogy breakout room. Jim?
Great, thank you, Alison. Just three sort of global things I want to say that came up in this breakout room, which was fantastic conversation, wide-ranging. The interesting notion of math self-concept emerged as an issue, and the idea that we need to develop ways to increase graduate students' facility with quantitative concepts via bridge programs or boot camps prior to the start of the year. Now, a lot of this happens as individual efforts at the program level, and maybe if there's collective ways to think about what's happening. As a quantitative researcher, statistics is statistics is statistics. statistics, and maybe we can collectively put our resources together and think about how to do this on a broader scale. So that's a little bit of that conversation. Second, the notion of inclusive pedagogy in remote teaching, in a remote teaching world. Many of us felt that remote instruction that we've been doing for the last 2 years, it's actually forced a lot of us to think critically about engagement. And a lot of us see students who might not typically engage suddenly finding the remote environment facilitates their engagement. And it's a really curious phenomenon. We think this needs more study. Could remote learning, if adopted more systematically and systemically, be a tool to increase engagement? Could remote learning actually help us reach our access and achievement goals for underrepresented students? So answering questions like that and the dozens more that might come up, that's going to require collective input from many different constituents to really figure out what is the future of remote learning in UC San Diego's pedagogical approach. And the final thing I'll say is diversity of graduate students, it's always of deep concern, especially from a recruitment side. And what that means is we're going to have to carefully watch whether our new approach to distributing diversity resources will actually work. And if it doesn't work, we're going to have to reassess. And that came out very, very clear in the conversation in this group. But while we're also monitoring that, we need to think simultaneously about how we can improve the engagement and the overall experience of the underrepresented students who we currently have in our programs. We got to do both. We got to think about the recruitment side of things, and we need to think about the experience side. So let me stop there.
Thank you, Jim. So next we will go to Erin Cricker, who was moderating the Continuous Improvement in Operations breakout session.
Yeah, thank you, Alison. So we talked about how creating Tiger Teams leverages experience and knowledge across job titles and even functional areas to create these problem-solving strike teams. We talked about the work that the Tiger Team has done with Default Day, which is a project that they worked on and whether or not it's actually been helpful to departments or divisions, whether it's created more work or lessened the burden. We talked about the Fund Manager Bootcamp pilot and how that's been successful in training TES staff and placing them in divisions and departments. And then we also talked about the upcoming L3 lunch on February 11th at 11 a.m., where we'll crowdsource a best practice for a checklist for onboarding students. So a lot of opportunity for identifying best practices, and we're excited to continue the work.
Wonderful, thank you so much. So next, I'll turn to Frank Silva, who is moderating the room focused on developing equity-minded practices and structures. Frank?
Thank you. So our group had a really great discussion, and what came out of it was the first thing that I think was really important was to acknowledge and to remind ourselves that opportunity gaps happen before the students get here. And so that really requires us as individuals who are part of this amazing institution to be able to ask ourselves questions, what am I doing individually? What are we doing systemically through policy and practice that is perpetuating opportunity gaps? And how can we better serve our students by changing our actions, changing our beliefs, looking at our own stereotypes that may be existing. And so that's all part of the process of being effective in really transforming the institution. The other thing that we discussed and that came out of our discussion was that there's this natural collective impact synergy that happens between program review and the larger review that happens as part of the strategic plan for inclusive excellence. So it's like this joint effort to really utilize data and ask ourselves these questions about, how can we use this data to close opportunity gaps and to improve the experiences of our students, our staff, and our faculty. And lastly, there was some points made about the importance of access to data and making sure that the people who need that data to make decisions have access to that data. And there was also some discussion about, as we talked about closing opportunity gaps, about an early alert system. So that was something that we noted in our conversation. That was it.
Wonderful, thank you. And so I'll take the last session, which was emerging areas of impact. So we had Professor Subramanian, Randsteiger, and Mai Nguyen as our panelists. So thank you to all three of those for leading that discussion. Someone mentioned earlier data and access to data. One thing that came up in our discussion was the concept of data fluency and how we might address some of those issues across campus in people's ability to access the data, but then also understand and be able to make use of all of the great wealth of data that we have across campus. We focused on also the intersection of sort of the arts, design lab, and the new school of computing and data information science. I think I'm getting it right, SKIDS. And how there's so many opportunities for folks to engage in collaborations, not just from a disciplinary perspective, but from an individual perspective. And so focused on some of those areas. And finally, as these are the design lab with Mai as the new director, and with this new school of computing and data information science, how can these new entities on campus or entities under new leadership really take from the experiences of some of our existing divisions in developing a diverse and inclusive faculty of diverse and inclusive student body within those disciplines. And so there was a lot of really great ideas and conversations about how we can leverage what we've learned, what we know, and be open to new ideas and new approaches. Let's see if looking at hiring plans, at recruitment, and again, ways in which we can collaborate, not just within the university, but regionally across the San Diego area in developing pipelines and developing collaborations and thinking more broadly about that. So at this time, I'd like to invite those who participated in these breakout sessions to offer any final thoughts or questions that they might like to pose. I believe you can use the, yes, EVC Simmons.
I had questions about two things that I'd love to hear more about. It sounds like there were really wide-ranging discussions. Clearly data is a huge theme, which is not surprising, and that's really good. I was curious about the oh yes, what was mentioned by David from Breakout Group 4 about how sharing best practices might actually reduce work for people. I was curious, were there any specific examples of that? Because that seems like a great direction for us to end up in.
So we did have a couple of examples. One is in the creation of assessments and assessment frameworks for people doing similar work. So if we have multiple units doing research with undergraduate students, it would be nice to have a unified assessment framework for them to make use of, so that everyone doesn't have to create their own and then figure out how to collect the data, how to analyze the data. We could do it a little bit collectively and create the community, create the stronger synergy of the community around the topic of assessment as one example. So that was one that there, and maybe that's enough, Elizabeth, given our timing here today.
Thanks, that's a great example. That's really helpful. Thanks, Alison. Great to hear what other questions are out there.
Is there anything that those who participated in the breakout sessions, anything that they would like to add or follow-up questions. If you can use the Q&A feature or raise your hand. Wonderful. I know that there was a lot of engaged conversation, and it probably in some groups felt like you could have used another 30 or 40 minutes to continue. All right. Yes, Elizabeth.
I'm going to keep asking questions as long as we're here. If other people don't. Oh, Shankar has a question. I'm going to let him go first. You can keep me in reserve.
Oh, thank you. I was just going to actually make a comment, not a question, because Alison invited us to expand a little bit on things that we didn't manage to cover in the brief presentations we had. So I just wanted to share with you, there was incredible enthusiasm amongst all departments, disciplines, and schools on campus with reference to the creation of skits. So I think we have a unique opportunity. What would discriminate us from other peer institutions which are creating such schools is, number one, we have the San Diego Supercomputer Center, which is a unique national entity. And that will help us really in terms of branding us in very good ways. We have the New Data Sciences Institute, but most importantly, the applications to data across, every single domain of, discipline that we have on campus. Take medical school, for example, health sciences. We are drowning in health data, wearable sensor data, for example. And I was just reminded, I just commented in the breakout session, even in completely things where you would not expect data to have an impact or data science to have an impact. Beethoven's 10th Symphony was completed by AI completely. And in fact, most experts on Beethoven could not make out the difference between the AI constructed symphony, which was first conducted in Bonn in October of 2021, and the original Beethoven pieces. And so you can see that this is done over a period of 10 years. It is not done overnight. And this tells you about how the data science is going to impact and influence our lives in every walk of life. So I just want to share the enthusiasm and excitement of our campus, and we can really make this a very unique enterprise for decades to come. Thank you.
Jim?
Well, I just want to continue the enthusiasm about this new school focusing on data science. Shankar, I know you and I have had opportunities to talk about this in the past. We live in a data-rich world. I would go so far as to say our entire economy globally is driven by data, has been for a long time. It's never going to change. And as graduate dean, I think, golly, can we think about giving data science skills to all graduate students, not just data science graduate students? You can't think about the arts, for example, in the future without worrying about the intersections of data and how data inform the arts, or in the social sciences, or in the humanities. There's just so many cool things. And I think about the synergies, Shankar, that we could create. What would make UC San Diego truly unique is if there was a data science module or experience for every graduate student at this university. So that's my 2 cents on the issue.
Jim, if I may comment very quickly, I think our one of the discussion points in our committee was really exactly this, not just for the graduate students, but also for undergraduate students, offering unique experience with data in learning different modalities and ways of thinking about day-to-day lives with data. And so we are thinking not just graduate, but undergraduate students, and for our staff and faculty, additional opportunities. And so this is exactly where we are going.
Wonderful, thank you. David?
So really just a comment as well. I've been talking with Mai on the side this morning to get another tour of the Design and Innovation Building. I was there recently, and it was one of the most sort of inspiring evenings of 2021 for me to be over there and see how many students and faculty members and staff members were actually employing collective impact to solve really interesting situations and problems. And it made me, and Jim just made me think a second ago, you know, about that night as well, because he just mentioned the possibility of using online and remote instruction to actually improve engagement and to help us to reach goals in terms of access and our EDI mission and things like that. And I feel like this morning and in some of these conversations that were held on that evening with the opening of the building and in the rooms today and in the big discussion today, there's this chance with all the expertise and creativity on campus to really reopen some conversations and think about how we might reconceive of solutions that we've had and held traditionally.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll hand it over to Ebony, and then we've received several questions in the Q&A and in some direct chat, so I'll share some of those as well. But Ebony?
So happy to go right after David and James cues up so perfectly. I was thinking about one of the pieces that came up in our group that I didn't share in the summary was how aligned it is right now for us to be rethinking about what the future of higher ed education in the classroom that's going on across the university, but definitely here at UC San Diego through several work groups and the work of the Faculty Senate, how that aligns with the affordable course piece, right? So as we look at equitable inclusion in our classrooms and our practices, as we look at what we need to teach for the new future that we're seeing, how can we also incorporate the affordable course materials into that conversation? And so just re-echoing the fact that we're all here having these conversations and the synergies that are showing up. And what David just said, like, how do we setting aside time to rethink some of the things that we set as normal practices, right? One of the best pieces that I think is low-hanging fruit that the affordable course group is going to look at is, you know, when you write a syllabus, you say required textbook, but is it actually required, right? Or is it recommended? And, you know, so just thinking through those pieces and really challenging our norms is really a part of this discussion in space. So that was it.
Wonderful. Yes, definitely. There's, I think we've discovered and reinforced a lot of opportunities for synergy and collaboration and great conversations. Some of this was generating a lot of ideas. And so one of the questions that we've gotten is, how do we move forward to advance those ideas? And one of the ways is to keep the momentum going around these kinds of events. We are planning a follow-up event on collective impact in the spring quarter. And then this forum, the Future of Academic Affairs, will be an annual event. And so we're hoping to continue to keep you updated via email. There'll be a collective impact website. And of course, the Executive Vice Chancellor's website will be continually updated with some of the missions and initiatives and a lot of the information that you all have heard today. In addition, we're sharing all of this information, the recorded lightning talks this morning. So if you feel like you want to re-listen to those amazing talks that we heard, sharing the slide deck and all of the contact information for the moderators in the breakout session. So that's another way in which we can continue to make those contacts. Of course, if you don't remember who it was you were speaking to, or you'd like us in the EVC's office to help facilitate that connection, of course, you can reach out to us, and we're happy to broker that if necessary. Lots of great discussions in the breakout rooms. We're getting a lot of questions about how people can continue to collaborate and continue to engage. So we will be having these larger follow-up events, but stay tuned for some smaller interactive opportunities for folks to engage. And of course, the mechanism of participating in the collective impact framework allows for those collaborations. And so we'll be working with our colleagues in the Division of Extended Studies, who'll be providing the backbone for helping to facilitate those conversations as working groups are formed, as questions emerge, as some of you heard in those breakout sessions. So this is the beginning of an ongoing conversation that was started in some ways before this event, that hopefully will catalyze into new ideas and new collaborations. And the idea is to continue doing this, sustain it over time as we continue to work together. Do we have any other comments or questions from folks? BC Pettit.
Thank you. I just wanted to say how pleased I am, how heartened I am to see the extent to which equity, diversity, and inclusion is woven into all of the effort. So thank you. That's it.
Thank you. You can definitely see equity, diversity, and inclusion as a theme in just about every breakout room and every talk that we heard today. So that's really, I agree, very heartening to see. Leave some space for any additional comments or questions. Okay, so with that, I would like to extend a sincere thank you to everybody, the moderators, the panelists, participants, for your contributions. The breakout sessions, it sounds like there was a lot of great conversations, some ideas, some new collaborations. So we look forward to hearing how those evolve in the next few months. Also, thank you to our lightning speakers for great presentations. I think that we're all leaving very inspired and looking forward to hearing more about the work that you're doing. It's exciting to think about the impact that all of this work will have on our campus, on our communities moving forward. So thank you again. So at this time, I'll hand it back to EDC Simmons, who will conclude today's forum with some closing remarks.
Thanks very much, Alison, and thanks very much, everybody. I found it really inspiring to listen to all the talks and to hear what's been going on in the breakout rooms. I look forward to working with you to build further collaborations and to help knit together the collaborations that you are clearly very eager to form. And let me say also that as you give feedback about this event, we would be really interested in knowing about your thoughts on future events, some of which we've already been gathering through the questions and the DMs and so on that Alison was referring to, but also maybe ideas about, are there groups of people who were not included in this event who it would be good to either include in a future large event or to have a particular targeted event for, since we know how to do that. So we definitely like your input on that. So I wanted to then close by saying just a word about how do you, from wherever you are starting, engage with collective impact. And there are really 4 pieces. There is committing yourself to really give this a try, to think about how your ideas, your initiatives, things that you are passionate about could be enhanced by this approach. There is the aspect of coordination, of saying, okay, instead of thinking about my idea as something very separate, let's see where we could go with this. Let's see where there are maybe parallel ideas that somebody else had. There was a great quote, I think we heard about how most of the time any great idea one of us has, probably somebody else has also had that great idea, to sort of find where that is and how it might be useful, and where what you're doing connects to or coordinates or enhances something that somebody else is doing. Collaboration, we've talked a lot about partnership today. And then communication. Today was all about communication, hearing from the colleagues in the lightning talks, hearing from all of you in the breakout rooms. That's really the core of today, and that's the core of collective impact. And I was so glad to see that people were asking, wait, how could I connect back with the people in my breakout group to continue the discussion? That's wonderful. That is absolutely essential. So on the last slide, then, I would just say we will have information online As I think Kim has been saying in some of the Q&A questions, we will be posting the slides and the notes and so on a new dedicated part of the website. And if you have specific questions about how to connect to people here or how to connect to the collective impact framework overall on the backbone and so on, then please contact my Deputy Chief of Staff, Jillian Hemingway, through this dedicated email address, collectiveimpact@ucsd.edu, because she is our ambassador to build those connections and really get them going. So if you're wondering, how do I get connected? Talk to Jillian and she will make that happen for you. Thank you all. I look forward to seeing you at future events, and I would welcome hearing your thoughts as you kind of mull this over and see where you're going to go with it. So thank you so much. I think we're going to be able to do a lot of great things together collectively for UC San Diego.